Hello, everyone. I'm Kara Delgado, the owner and administrator of the North Houston Homestead Senior Care Office. I want to start by thanking you for taking some time to join me today. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that in my industry, senior care, is always a bit challenging, and that's the topic of family dynamics. I'm going to dive more specifically into sibling dynamics. Now, I know for a fact that those of you who have worked in senior care have faced many of these complicated and challenging relationships. I've certainly been in that boat myself many times. And hopefully today I can give you some tips on how to help families and siblings and how to stay out of the middle. So let's look more specifically at the topics on the next slide. We'll start with some hot button or red flags so that you can avoid or you can be prepared when these touchy subjects come up. We'll also get lots of tips today and even some checklists to help siblings go through the caregiving journey. And we'll discuss some resources that can help siblings overcome and even avoid these situations or issues. On the next slide, let's look at some reasons why sibling conflicts occur, especially in caregiving situations. As we go through the webinar today, I want you to think about your own family and siblings and think about how a caregiving situation would impact those relationships. I am one of 7 kids, and we were all together over the Thanksgiving holiday. So it gave me an opportunity to think quite a bit about our sibling dynamics as I was preparing for this presentation. If you don't have any siblings, think about an example of a family you know, or maybe a family you've worked with if you work in senior care. And I want you to really try to visualize when you're thinking about this topic, the family that you have in mind. So we all know siblings don't always share well. It's not always easy for brothers and sisters to share. And many of us can remember a time when we were growing up, the challenge of divvying up toys or divvying up bedrooms, family cars as we became teenagers. Even sharing household chores may have led to family conflict. Well, some things never change. And according to research conducted by the Homestead Senior Care Network, sharing the care of elderly parents can be a source of conflict for adult children and adult siblings. The research found that in 43% of U.S. families, one sibling has the responsibility for providing the most care. And in only 2% of families did the siblings split the caregiving responsibilities. I don't know about you, but I found that statistic kind of surprising. Only 2% of siblings shared in the responsibility of caregiving. We all know that families become busy, people get busy, and staying in touch with family and siblings isn't easy. Even when you live in the same community or same town, it can be difficult at times. However, not having regular communication with our brothers and our sisters can lead to miscommunication and hurt feelings, making it even more difficult to have a candid discussion or making decisions about what's happening with an aging parent. And according to Dr. Ingrid Candice, a sibling relationship expert from the University of Western Ontario, caregiving can either bring families together or cause trouble. And in some cases, it can do both. These issues can be very emotional. So let's look at a few additional statistics on the next slide. Here's some interesting research that provides great insight into the issues that siblings face as they try to provide the best care for their aging parents. And this research can give you or us even more insight into the issues families face when assisting an aging parent and the issues that their adult children face. But first, let's look at the results of a survey of about 710 adults in the United States and about 380 adults in Canada, ages 35 to 60. The research was conducted for the Home Instead Senior Care Network by the Boomer Project, which is a leading authority for information and insights about today's boomer consumers and the fast-growing 50-plus age market. The respondents had siblings or step-siblings and had currently been providing care for a parent or an older adult or relative, or had provided care in the last 18 months. The research showed that 46% of caregivers say that their sibling relationships had deteriorated and their brothers and sisters were unwilling to provide help. 42% of family caregivers give themselves and their siblings a below average grade for their ability to divide the caregiving workload. Think about that for just a second. The caregiver providing the care, the majority of the care, and the caregiver who wasn't providing the majority of the care both said that they didn't really know how to divide the care. So let's look at some other statistics that we found regarding who is most likely to take on the care as the primary caregiver. 64% of the youngest siblings are primary caregivers, and as compared to 57% of the oldest sibling being the caregiver. 49% of middle siblings were caregivers. Being the oldest, I would assume, as the oldest, that person would take on the majority of the care. But obviously, based on these statistics, that I was wrong. So in a bit, we're going to talk more about why is it that the youngest child may be the preferred caregiver in a caregiving situation. Back to the research. Interestingly enough, many aging parents have a favorite child whom he or she wants to be his or her primary caregiver, often years before they actually need the caregiving. In 2 out of 3 cases, the favorite is the obliging youngest, not the bossy eldest, according to a 2010 study conducted for Home Instead Senior Care. In a joint study by Cornell and Purdue universities in 2013 found that a parent is more likely to become depressed when his or her preference of primary caregiver is not honored. So what can families do? Let's look at some solutions on the next slide. Home Instead Senior Care has partnered with sibling relationships expert Dr. Ingrid Candice from the University of Western Ontario to develop the 50-50 rule program to help siblings deal with the many issues associated with caring for aging parents. The 50-50 rule refers to the average age of 50 when siblings are typically caring for their parents, as well as the need for brothers and sisters to equitably share the care planning 50-50. So if you're working with seniors with adult children around the age of 50 who are trying to figure out how to share the care, it's time for them to develop a plan, and the 50-50 rule program can help. So what are some issues that can cause sibling conflict? Let's look at that on the next slide. Family caregiving can be stressful under any circumstances, but certain situations are hot button triggers. You've probably seen these issues come up frequently if you work in senior care in families that you work with. So let's run through them. Hot button issue number 1 is illness. A parent who becomes ill or experiences declining health can leave a family facing all sorts of potentially difficult situations. Who will provide the additional care? How will the care be divided? Siblings can have differing opinions on the type of care their parents should receive. For example, I have seen a number of families in situations where the parent's not thriving, and a great plan of care would be hospice or palliative care. However, one sibling is not quite ready for mom or dad to be on hospice care or to receive palliative care. And then you have another sibling who may think this is a really good option. Or maybe you've seen siblings who are arguing over whether or not assisted living or specialized Alzheimer's care is the best option. And this is where it can be hard because siblings will often turn to a professional or a senior care expert to be the tiebreaker. And this is where it's very important to stay neutral and to be objective. Also, to further complicate situations, many illnesses present changing needs, and siblings may need to be flexible to address the changing issues that they may face and changing health issues. Another disagreement can come up along the same lines is elder conditions and capabilities. It's common for family members to have different ideas or perceptions of what's wrong with a loved one or what should be done about it. Or you have a loved one who's not capable of doing certain things. I've certainly worked with many families where, specifically, I can remember one situation recently where the son lived out of state and his father has Alzheimer's, and he and his sister did not really see his capabilities the same. He wanted our caregiver to take his dad out on outings and to socialize more, where his sister, the daughter who lived in town, she felt like her dad got more confused on outings and that it made him more anxious. And so the two just had differing opinions and perceptions on what was really going on with their dad. Hot button issue number 2 is money. This is no surprise. Money is often complicates life at any stage, let alone when dealing with an aging parent or an ill parent. Siblings can be forced to make tough decisions about caregiving, and finances are often a factor and have to be factored into the equation. There may be one sibling who has healthcare power of attorney and another who has financial power of attorney. There could potentially be some conflict in a situation like this if they don't see eye to eye. Hot button issue number 3 is inheritance. While some families contend with a lack of funds to provide care for their loved one, others have the temptation of their inheritance influencing their decisions. If siblings are coming from the wrong place, making decisions based on wanting their parent to either spend or save money can cause conflicts. Siblings will need to recognize that this is a highly emotionally charged issue that can easily escalate into family feuds, and one in which everyone stands to lose. Involving an impartial financial planner may be the best option in a situation where money is a significant tension point. We have to take into account roles and rivalries that might date back to childhood, and they can rear their ugly heads in situations like this. So even mature adults find themselves back in the sandbox when families get together. And this tendency can grow even more pronounced under the strain of caregiving. I saw this firsthand when working with a family with 2 brothers that did not get along. And because of this, they communicated through their sister. And I thought it was a little bit strange, but later learned that one brother had been sent to live with his grandparents as a child, and the other brother resented him for it to this day. And there's just never a dull moment when you're dealing with many families and the dynamics that can exist. Hot button issue number 4 is distance. Siblings who live in the same town or city as their parents may be stuck with most of the caregiving work. As I mentioned earlier, in 43% of families, one sibling is responsible for the bulk of the care of mom or dad. The long distance caregiver can feel left out, or as if they do speak up, that they're going to be viewed as meddling by the primary caregiver. Again, the primary caregiver may feel that the others are not helping enough and that they're left to do all the work. Another area of focus is stress on the caregiver. Daily life can be stressful enough, family caregiving can make it even more so. Adult caregivers who have started a new job or they're still trying to raise their own children can become overwhelmed when elderly family members need help. Siblings who are bearing the brunt of the caregiving may resent their brothers and sisters who are unable or unwilling to help, leading to even more stress. For some, it may feel like a burden on one person that takes on most of the duties. On the next slide, let's look at some additional underlying emotional areas that caregivers may feel. Another issue that often comes up is control. It's important to establish who is the boss, so to speak. Siblings should each have a role if they want one, but it's important to appoint a primary person or coordinator. Maybe it's the power of attorney or the oldest child. Maybe it's a child who works in healthcare. And using words like coordinator rather than primary caregiver or person in control or person in charge, that can foster an environment that feels more collaborative among siblings. Each sibling or person has their own strengths in every family. So giving everyone a role is important and helps each person feel that they are a member of the care team. Encourage families to sit down and work together to make a strength-based plan. For example, I worked with a family that had multiple children spread out throughout the United States. They divided up responsibilities based on each child's strengths. One of the sons was a physician and oversaw all of his mother's medical needs. Another son was a businessman and he handled all of her finances. She had a daughter who worked in hospitality, and that daughter was sort of her social coordinator and the social one. She made sure that her mom kept in touch with family through Facebook, emails, and regular family visits. In a way, she was, as I said, a sort of the events coordinator for her mom. Giving people roles and each sibling roles based on their strengths makes it easier for everyone to feel that they're contributing to the care. Underappreciation is another emotion that some caregivers feel. There can be situations where one sibling is doing all the work, carrying the entire load for the family. And when this person is overworked and underappreciated, everyone will suffer. The caregiver themselves may feel a tremendous stress and pressure when that person is stressed out. Trust me, everyone in the family, the rest of the family, will feel it, including the care recipient or their aging parent, which is really the last thing that we want to have happen. So it's important that we help the primary caregiver realize that they can't do it alone and that they need to manage stress. As for professionals, we suggest that they call family meetings, ask for more help from others, and encourage families to come up with solutions. This is also a time when I think it's important to share resources in the community that can help the primary caregiver manage the situation. Also, giving tips on managing stress will go a long way with the caregiver. The perfectionist, we all know these people. Some of us may be perfectionists, and the mentality is sometimes if I don't do it myself, it's not going to get done right. We've all come across family members or family caregivers, if you work in senior care, that think that no one can do it better or take care of mom or dad better than I can. In our professional roles, we need to bring awareness that it's really okay if others don't make the bed the same way we would as a primary caregiver. Growing up, I was really efficient at doing the dishes and had siblings or a sister who took too long to get the dishes done and just didn't do it right in my eyes. In one of our many arguments, she said something to the effect of, who cares how it gets done as long as it gets done? The point is, we can encourage adult siblings or primary caregivers to sort of let it go. If it takes something off of their plate and it's helping, or they're helping and contributing to the care, the perfectionist personality is not everyone, thank goodness. But again, it's important to recognize, as long as it gets done, it doesn't have to be done perfectly. Okay, so let's start talking about some solutions. And let's start with a checklist on the next slide. So encourage families to identify and list the senior care needs. These needs can include things like medical issues, housing, activities of daily living, end-of-life decisions such as wills, advance directives, long-term care, food preparation or meal planning, housekeeping, scheduling doctor's appointments, transportation to and from appointments, paying bills, grocery shopping, companionship, and outings. Once the needs of the individual are nailed down, next, they need to research options. When siblings have identified the types of services and interventions or care options that the person needs, this is where we come in as professionals and help them discover resources that can help meet those needs. Have families hold a family meeting to discuss how they're going to handle which and who is going to handle which job, and divide tasks up so that everyone has input and a role and an opportunity to share ideas. Encourage families to plan ahead. When needs and resources are identified, siblings will have a better idea of what will be required from each family member. For example, if the person wants to stay at home and age in place, then the siblings need to plan on who will provide support to their parent and in what capacity. So checklists can really be helpful, but let's look also at some general tips to provide siblings on the next slide. Experts offer a number of recommendations about how to help siblings cope with the demands of family caregiving. Let's talk briefly about avoiding family conflicts that can develop between siblings. The first things for families to remember is the importance of talking and listening. Adult siblings should get together in person or by phone or by Skype and really listen to each other's questions and concerns. They can begin to list resources that the family will need through the caregiving journey. And I talked earlier about the importance of brothers and sisters maintaining regular contact to avoid miscommunication and hurt feelings. And listening. A lot of times we don't want to listen, we just want to do. This is one of the times where listening will pave the way to success. Second, encourage siblings to make decisions together. Working together to make decisions, which will be the key to harmony. Seniors' needs change as they age. So do the lives of the adult siblings. Starting off by making decisions together will help in a changing environment. This goes to the next point of remaining flexible. Planning and flexibility are also important for caregiver success. As parents age, the need for care and assistance will increase. As a result, families will need to adapt their plan on a regular basis. Divide the workload. All of the caregiving tasks should be divided equally. Siblings should consider a division of labor that takes into account each family member's interests and skills, as well as their availability. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but it can't be stressed enough. Families can promote sibling teamwork and decision-making by setting up times to stay in touch. Options include family meetings, phone calls, email updates. Families can set up a caregiving plan, including these regular meetings and meeting times, and this will go a long way towards avoiding miscommunication and misunderstandings. It's also important to make sure no one sibling is doing too much. That 2% of families that are actually splitting up caregiving duties needs to grow. Primary caregivers need to ask for help if they need it. Uh, And long distance caregivers should check in often and ask for ways that they can help the primary caregiver. Long distance caregivers can also help by placing online orders, paying bills, record keeping, appointment scheduling, and of course, they can assist with companionship for their parents via regular telephone calls, letters, emails, and for some seniors, through Facebook and other social networking sites. People these days are pretty technologically savvy, so there are certainly other ways or many ways long distance siblings can stay in touch. And I can't stress this enough. Communication is the key. So let's look at communication specifically on the next slide. Spend time understanding the situation from each person's perspective. We need to make sure we're clear that just because another person's perspective is different in the family, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. And when siblings take the time to learn each other's perspective, things will go a lot smoother. Encourage siblings to spend time with the care recipient and talk to them in person. It's important for families to see with their own eyes what's happening, visiting with doctors and other healthcare professionals. The key is not to jump to conclusions, but to seek understanding. Over communicate. I can relate this to one family in particular that I worked with, and essentially, the client was only receiving assistance in the mornings, and she came down with the flu and became weaker. And her daughter, who was a healthcare power of attorney, decided that she needed some extra assistance in the evenings getting ready for bed. When the brother, who was the financial power of attorney, received the bill, he was upset because his sister didn't inform him of the increase in care and increase in cost. And this conflict could have been avoided with a simple phone call or an email between the two siblings. So making sure siblings are communicating is key. Over communicating is an especially good tip with long distance caregivers. And it's not just the primary caregiver's job to send out communication. They are busy caring for mom or dad, and siblings should be calling and checking in on a regular basis. And that's where empathy also comes into play. As siblings interact and really put themselves in the different roles and understand perspectives is a good idea. Any body language can have a big impact on the situation. If a person is relaxed and calm, this will show in their face, their posture, and in their tone of voice. And finally, be honest. This goes back to the primary caregiver. Is the workload too much? If so, they have to communicate and get help. Be sure to take a good look at your caregiving responsibilities and consider, what do I really need help with before asking for it? Do you want your siblings to do certain tasks? Do you want them to give you a break every now and then? Or do you feel like you have the care under control and you need more financial support? Or do you really need emotional support? If you are honest with yourself about your needs as a caregiver, then you can be honest about what your needs are from your siblings. It's also important to be honest and realistic about what you can and can't provide. Some examples are, maybe your sister and your mom do not get along and end up in shouting matches each time they're together. Then ask her to get the groceries or pay the bills. Maybe your brother can't contribute financially but has extra time to help out with household work or could provide respite care for the primary caregiver. And I know for some families who work, for some families I work with, there's difficulty with communication and decision making, and it's best to bring in a mediator or a professional from outside of the family. For many on this webinar, you are that mediator if you're in senior care. And I know how I have had to be the mediator many times. Some examples might be a financial advisor, a legal counsel, physician, a social worker, care manager. It's important that that mediator stay neutral and consider the best interest of the aging loved one, parent. So, what are some resources available? Let's look at that on the next slide. At the core of the 50/50 rule is a family relationship and communication guide and a website, solvingfamilyconflict.com. Both feature practical advice and a wealth of real-life scenarios and expert responses. The checklist is also found there and lots of additional information and resources. There are also organizations and resources available to help family caregivers learn about their options. You can encourage, or I always encourage family members to do their research and reach out to resources so that everyone has an opportunity to learn and share ideas. Family members can start by checking out websites such as eldercare.gov and caring.com. Resources in the seniors community, such as agencies on aging, the seniors doctor, a geriatric care manager, can also be of assistance. Taking care of aging family members can be a tough job, and the stakes are high. Sibling relationships and the quality of the seniors' care are at risk. But with new approaches and a focus on building better family relationships, caregiving can make families stronger than ever, and that's really the goal. So let's wrap up on the next slide. I hope you found today's presentation both helpful and encouraging. We've gone over a lot of information today, and it's likely that many of you who work in senior care have faced some of these challenging situations that we've discussed today. Take a minute to think about next steps for yourself. I have listed some questions here to help with those next steps. What are some action steps for you? How will you incorporate this information into your arsenal of resources? What are some things you can do to help family caregivers minimize sibling conflict while caring for parents? And what resources are available to help ease the stress between siblings? Thank you for joining me today. I want to thank you for everything you do every day if you work in senior care or if you are a family caregiver. Know that you're truly appreciated and have a great day. Thank you.